Hello, hello. Paula Edwards here from Advanced Virtual Assistants. Really good to see you again, and thanks for joining us. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, and then you'll get notified of any new content that we're putting out. We're trying to share lots of hints and tips for you as virtual assistants and online business managers. I myself am a certified director of operations, and I've trained hundreds of virtual assistants and online business managers over the years. In addition to that, we've got an agency where we have a team of virtual assistants and online business managers serving our clients. I've been doing this since 2016, so I've got a wealth of knowledge and I want to share it all with you. So thank you for being here, and I really would be grateful if you felt you could subscribe and tell your friends about us as well. So today I want to talk to you about what I typically see a lot of new virtual assistants making mistakes. And there's no judgment here because I made exactly these mistakes. And I just wanted to share a few hints and tips to help you avoid them or help you to pull it back and rectify it now. So perhaps you're somebody who's a new VA that's struggling, or your business isn't exactly what you wanted it to be, or perhaps you're thinking about setting up as a VA, and this is going to be helpful for you to avoid some of the pitfalls that I've already done for you. So let's dive straight in. Some of the big mistakes that I see that new VAs make in their early days. So the first one is that there's a tendency to want to say yes to everything. And I know how that feels, because when you start your business, you're really keen to get going. You want to get fully booked. You want to get as many client hours as possible. And as a result of that, I think we tend to say yes to things perhaps that don't necessarily align with our skills or that don't light us up. And let's face it, we're creating these businesses to have more freedom and flexibility and deliver the work that we get deep joy doing. Now, I do know, in the early days, we sometimes find that there's work we take on that we don't love, and maybe we find that out on the journey. Maybe we have a little gut feeling that we decide to ignore. I've been there and done that as well. And we do take on work that isn't necessarily, exactly what we want. That's okay. This is a learning journey. We learn from these things and we move on and we grow as a result. But there is a tendency to say yes to everything. And I'm not suggesting that it's wrong to say yes to all things that, perhaps aren't the things you love. But what I do want you to think about is, do you really have those skills? Because I see virtual assistants saying, I've known somebody in the past, for example, say that they know how to use, there's a software called, it used to be called Infusionsoft back in the day, and now it's called Keep. And it's a big piece of software, there's lots to learn. And I remember speaking to a virtual assistant who had said that they knew this software and that they would be able to work with it. And of course, I'd never seen it. And there are some cases, some instances where you can say, I know that software, like I know email marketing software, for example, but it's a real risk if it isn't something you really know. So I always think, honesty is the best policy. I don't know that specific one, but I know this one. I can try and apply the logic, and I'm happy to learn on my own time. But what you'll find is if you say yes, you can do it, the pressure that you put on yourself is enormous, especially if it's really hard to do. And some of these things are, Infusionsoft is one of them, for example. You can't just dive in and know it overnight. It takes time. And it's the same is true for many things. So be careful not to say yes to everything in terms of the type of work you're being offered. The other thing is that because it's in our nature to want to help people. That's who we are. It's innate in us that we tend to not like to say no. So if a client that we're working with says, can you do this? Or can you do this? Or can you do this? And in fact, I was talking to a potential client last week who said exactly this. She had a VA that said, yeah, I can take that on. I can take that on. I can take that on. And in the end went completely AWOL because it felt like maybe it was too much. I don't know. So we've got to learn to say no to things if we haven't got the capacity, or we don't know how to do it, or it's just not something that we want to learn how to do. And there's nice ways of being able to say no, and it's okay to say no. And this ties into some of the other big mistakes that I want to talk to you about. They're all very much linked, actually. So saying yes as a VA in our early days to everything is a real temptation, and I really want you to listen to your gut and think, can I do that? Do I want to do that? Have I got time to do that? Can I actually meet that deadline? Don't just say yes and think I'm going to try my best to meet it. Honesty is always the best policy, and I really think that you will be much more respected if you said, and the trust will grow much faster if you said, look, I can do that for you, but I'm not going to get to it this week. This, you can say, it's not no, it's just not now, isn't it? So don't feel that you always have to say yes to everything. You can say no, or you can postpone it. Or sometimes, if you want to say no, maybe you can offer another solution. Perhaps you could say, I don't know how to use that software, I'm afraid, but I do know somebody that can, or I can help you find somebody that can. So, always maybe just offer another solution. If saying no feels uncomfortable to you, and it's perfectly okay to say no. The client won't expect you to always say yes, by the way. They don't expect you to know every single thing. So always feel like you can say no. But if that feels tough, especially when you start out, and it does, I remember it well, say no, but with like an option of a solution, perhaps. I can't do that this week, but I can do it next week, or I can't do that, but I can help you find somebody that can, whatever it is. So please don't feel that you have this obligation to say yes to everything, because you get yourself into hot water and it starts to become a business that isn't what you created it for. So please take my advice on that one. The second thing I wanted to talk to you, which ties in really nicely, another big, very common mistake with new virtual assistants, and actually even some that have been around a little while, is managing our own boundaries. So it's kind of like in the same vein, isn't it? Managing our own boundaries is, first of all, to manage our boundaries, we have to be clear about what they are. So how can you expect a client not to overstep the mark if you're not clear on where the mark is? So one thing I like to teach our new VAs to do in the early stages is think about what your boundaries are. And a really helpful little tip to think about what they are is to create a welcome booklet. And a welcome booklet is like a PDF booklet that you can easily create in Canva that introduces them to you and the way you like to work. And it's quite a nice little thing to receive as a client, because it's quite informative, but also it gives you the opportunity to put in there what your boundaries are, and it feels like in a much more comfortable way. You don't want to be, none of us want to come across like dictative. That feels uncomfortable to say, no, I don't work, at 1 minute past 6 or whatever. So what I would urge you to do, if you haven't done it already, or maybe go back and revisit it, is create a welcome booklet for your clients. And in there, share all the information about you, the skills you've got, the things you like to do, but also, what your payment terms are, what hours you like to work, how you like to be contacted, all of those things. So some examples might be, I strictly stop work at 6 p.m. and I don't answer the phone. If it's 1 minute to 6, I won't answer the phone because I know it's going to go over 6 p.m. I've actually always been quite good at managing my boundaries. But, if you've decided your hours, and it might be you want to work school hours, for example, and then you get a call at 4:15 when you're trying to do homework with your children, that's really stressful. So what you want to do is clearly communicate from the outset that, this is my availability. This is when you can expect me to answer a phone call to you. And then if it rings during that time, you yourself will know there's an emergency. If there's an emergency, of course, I'd pick up the phone, because maybe you know what's going on in the business, and there may be some expectation that that's the case. Or maybe you can have a way of like letting them contact you in the case of an emergency. But if it's not inside your working hours and it's not an emergency, then don't answer the phone. Because if you answer the phone outside of your working hours, guess what? There's going to be an expectation to always answer the phone outside your working hours. And clients don't mean to be treading over your boundaries, but if you don't manage them, nobody else is going to, and they might not even know what they are. So if you work through your welcome booklet, identifying, these are the times I'm available to work, then you can always refer them back to that. And so you may have read in my welcome booklet that I don't work within those hours. So I'm really sorry I missed your call, for example. What else to say about that? Another thing I found is I don't really like being contacted on WhatsApp. I see WhatsApp as my private, it's my family. I talk to my family and my friends on WhatsApp. I don't really use it for business, although a lot of people do. It just, especially early on, I didn't particularly like it. And so I used to have one client that would WhatsApp me all the time, like it might be Bank Holiday Monday, and it felt like I could feel the stress levels in me rising because, I'm thinking, what's going on? And immediately I moved to, what have I done wrong? And I'm sure you can understand how that is. And so if you say inside your welcome booklet, I don't typically use WhatsApp, or you can say what you do use. And then I put, I use WhatsApp only in the case of emergencies. So I know that if a client contacts me on WhatsApp or phones me directly, then there's an emergency, and I'm really okay with that. But outside my working hours, if I remember getting this barrage of WhatsApps on a Bank Holiday Monday once. The stress was enormous, and it wasn't actually anything to be worried about. All it was the client had decided to work that day, and they were getting things off of their to-do list and onto mine. But without it, just caused an awful lot of stress. So think about what your boundaries are. If your payment terms are 14 days or 30 days or whatever, 7 days, whatever they are, then it's easy to use that as your rule book to refer clients back and say, oh, you may remember in my welcome book, my payment terms are 14 days, so your invoice is now overdue. So it's almost like writing policies for your own business is the thing to hide behind, even though it is only you. So, but first of all, please, please, please think about what your boundaries are, because if you don't know what they are and you're not trying to enforce them, then you can't blame the clients for overstepping them. And if clients are overstepping your boundaries repeatedly, unknowingly, but most often, that causes like stress for you, resentment. You might not love your business as much. You might start to get a bit frustrated with that client. It's all negative. So please do think about what your boundaries are and make sure that you stick by them, you abide by them yourself, and then others will follow suit. I promise you. So please do that work. And then let me see. Another big problem I see with mistakes for new virtual assistants is they forget that they're not employed. So it's taking your employee mindset hat off and putting your business owner hat on. And I think, in our course, I teach you how to be a business owner and a leader and to step up into that CEO role. But I think many virtual assistants go into this business thinking about the service delivery, and fair enough, that is kind of why we start the business. Oh, I can do admin or PA or bookkeeping or whatever remotely. So we always go into it thinking about the service delivery, but many of us forget that we're actually creating a business, and we've got to learn to do that professionally and run it professionally in order for to get the growth that we're hoping for. So I do see very often that virtual assistants don't move from that employee mindset to that CEO mindset. And that's really, really important. And this again ties into your boundaries in some ways, because and that sense of feeling like you have to say yes, they're all very interlinked. You don't have to say yes because you're your own business owner. You get to choose, and you're allowed to say no. And what's that phrase? No is a whole sentence. You don't have to justify it. So examples might be, I've heard people say, well, first of all, there's rates of pay. An hourly rate as an employed person isn't the same as what you should be charging as a business owner. It's very different. There's lots of things you've got to include in your hourly rate that you wouldn't have to include inside your hourly rate as an employed person. That's one thing I see a big problem with. Say, for example, you were earning £15 an hour as an admin assistant. then people find it very difficult to charge anything more than £15 an hour, but you're going to be completely out of pocket if you don't, think about all of the other things that you're liable for to pay for in your business. Another thing is, saying no, being able to say no. That's really important. You don't have to say yes. You can say no to things. It's your business. You do it your way. You do the work that you'd like to do. Another thing is sometimes clients ask to see your CV. Well, you would never ask a hairdresser to see a CV before you decide to work with them, or you'd never ask a plumber, can I see your CV, before you decide to work with them, because they're business owners. Business owners don't have a CV. It's not something we use as a business owner, and it's actually something that really gets my goat. So no, we don't have a CV, but I'm really happy to provide you with some testimonials or example of work or that type of thing. So, or I can put you in touch with a previous client. People want reassurance or trust, then they're the ways of getting that, not a CV. You can share what you've done in the past with them. This is the type of work I've done, or this is who I've worked for, or here's a project I've done in the past, but not a CV. That we don't have a CV anymore. We're not employees. So that's another example of when we have to move out of this employee mindset and not share our CV, or not maintain it anymore whilst we're a business owner. Other ways are, say, for example, you're not going to get some work finished this week because you've got family visiting, for example, and you've decided to be more available to them and you're not working as many hours. You don't have to say why you can't do something. You just let them know that you're not available. And it could be for other client work. It doesn't matter what it is that what's blocking your diary out. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to say, I'm not going to be around on Thursday because I've got a dentist appointment. You don't have to say that. You just, I'm not going to be around on Thursday. You don't even have to let them know that, so long as you're going to meet the expectations. Or if there's an expectation for you to be around on Thursday normally and you're not, then of course you'd expect to communicate it. But so long as you're doing your work within the timeframes and the boundaries in which you'd agreed with that client, then you don't have to be saying, I'm not in because I've got a hair appointment, dentist appointment, so-and-so's ill, whatever. All of that said, it is really important to communicate really well with your clients. And so if something's going to be late, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be communicating that really well, and you should be talking about that ahead of time and coming up with solutions. So yeah, please take off your employee mindset hat, and you don't have to book holiday. You do have to let them know you're not going to be available, but you don't have to schedule it or book it with them. It's more of a, this is when I'm going to be away kind of conversation, and then you manage your workload around that. So I think that that draws conclusion to the 3 main mistakes I see new VAs make. I hope that's been helpful. Feel free to come and ask me any questions. Please do follow us. Come and join our Facebook group. I'd love to have you over there. But I hope this has been helpful to invite your friends to. Take care for now and see you next time.